Still working on quorum.
He says they're ready, so maybe he's on by now.
Rob, are we ready?
We are set.
Okay, do we have Christopher Keene? Yeah, there he is. Okay.
Excellent.
Hey, everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start with our presenters this afternoon, and I'd like to introduce the Vice President for Research, Christopher Keene. Chris, the floor is yours. Take it away.
Okay. Hey, thanks, David, and thanks, everyone. Great to see you. So David, we have what, 15 minutes or so, then 15 in discussion. Is that how it works, or?
Yeah, that'd be great.
That's super. Okay. All right, everyone. Great to see you. I'm really happy today to present on FNA. My colleagues, Dan Norquist and Derek Brown, are out there joining. I see there they are. Okay, great. So, and Derek's going to be taking us for a short segue to look at our transparency website in the middle of this. So let me just share. Okay. Okay. And I'll do this. Okay, no, I don't think I need subtitles. Okay, can you all see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, super. So so I think, as all of you are aware, because we have been looking at the WSU Facility Administrative Cost Policy. I want to start by thanking all of you, I think probably well over 30 now, who've commented on the draft policy that was posted several weeks ago. I also want to thank, Doug Call, David Turnbull, and Greg also for their helpful comments over time as well. So what I wanted to do today is just take you through the current policy and the major changes to the new one. Okay. So as an outline, I'll give a little bit of background just on awards, expenditures, and FNA itself. Then I'll cover the policy and the changes. And basically, there are three major changes. One is we'd like to move towards managing what we call the system portion, or you may all recall as the 77% portion, or think of it as the portion that does not go to the colleges and units right now. It goes to the campuses or the central administration, right? So we're gonna talk about that. And again, thanks to your comments on this, but at the end of the day, we have made no changes in the percentage allocations to campuses, colleges, or units. We will talk about some changes to transparency and some other things associated with campuses, college units. So the first change is we want to think about change how we manage the central and use the central piece. Second is enhancing transparency for an FNA, which there hasn't been much of or any for a long time, maybe forever. And then we've also added some guiding principles into the policy, and I'll close with next steps. So quick overview. This is a plot of WSU's research expenditures versus time, what we spend on research, right? And so, reading from the bottom up, it starts with federal dollars, grants, and direct appropriations. Then state dollars, industry dollars, internal dollars, which is quite a bit there in the dark blue. And that, for example, if we do, if we fix up a laboratory or do internal work on infrastructure, that's an example of an internal expenditure. And then we have some miscellaneous expenditures as well. Now, out of all this, we expended about 35 million in FNA in 19, about 34 million in 20. So in fact, FNA, there was a bit of a drop in 20 there, but in previous years, it's sort of been going up about $1 million a year. So one of the questions we wanted to get to was, how do we actually choose to spend those increases, or, in the future, hopefully not, but maybe decreases in FNA every year? What exactly do we want to spend it on? So that's sort of one of the main things we want to talk about. So that's sort of the top level numbers about where we are. This is just a little bit more dated, sort of interesting. This is our federal awards by campus and agency. You can see the campuses down the left and the agencies across the top. HHS with NIH obviously is now, and CDC from funds in the Owl School is our largest federal supporter now. And that number was about 210 million last year. And I just want to point out that I want to thank all of you on this call for your contribution to this. Obviously, it's the faculty that make this go, right? And our job here in OR and elsewhere in the administration is to support you. So basically, this is a huge team effort to get this going. OR, our government affairs colleagues, finance and administration, everyone makes this whole system go. And so we're just really happy that this number's been going up as well, but we won't get into that today. So instead, really, the focus of today is how we allocate those $30-odd million of F&A. And we won't get into this today, but I just want to point out that we get F&A when we spend grant money, we get F&A, right? So that's actually how it comes. We don't get it till we actually spend the underlying sources. So we allocate originally, but we actually really track the expenditures that come when we actually spend money on grants and research. So we created a committee to look at this, of course. And this was at the request of President Schultz, and this started back in mid to late 2018. And the committee's actually been doing a number of things. We're going to talk today, but just about the new policy. So we had three major responsibilities: overall policy and strategy, which is what we're going to talk about today. Overseeing allocations of funds, and that's pretty much looking at the policy, but we also do things like we streamlined the policy for allocating F&A from transferred grants to support newly hired faculty. That's now much faster and quicker than it used to be. Hopefully you've seen some of the benefits of that. If not, let's just say it goes a lot faster than it used to. And finally, transparency and reporting. We just want to basically improve that a lot. And we'll show you actually a website on that we've put together. It's available and will be continuously enhanced. So those are the main elements of our charter. Our committee is fairly small, although we get input from lots of folks in doing this job. So I chair it. The provost and Elizabeth's predecessors have been on it and actively engaged in this policy. Stacy Pearson for Finance Administration and VP. And we have a Chancellor and Dean representative on the committee currently right now, which is Chancellor DeWald and Dean Mary Rezac. And as I say, we get a lot of input from associate deans and other people as well. So let me just skip to sort of the heart of the matter, which is what are the major changes in the current policy? And I'm going to flip between this slide and this one here, which shows the current policy as I go through this. So first of all, we've really focused on the piece allocated to the central piece. And we've created a fund which we'd like to allocate strategically called the Foundational and Strategic Investment Fund, FSIF. I'll use that acronym, in the remainder of this talk. And just for reference, let me just quickly flip to this slide, which shows actually how we do this currently. So don't get lost in all these boxes. We'll come back to them. Very simple way to think of it. F&A revenue comes in from a grant or contract, our revenue comes in, and 23% of that goes to the college and or unit involved. It's been 15% to the unit, 8% to the college, and again, that ratio is maintained. Thank you for your thoughts on that. And what we've done there is we've added transparency and some principles on how folks ought to work together. That I'll get to that. And then on the other side is what we call the 77%, 77 being the sum of 28, 38, 7, and 4, okay? And, basically the main part of what we're doing is basically proposing that fraction on the left be sort of thought through and allocated in a more strategic way. Okay, that's a big part of it. Okay, so back to the major changes. I'll talk more about how that strategic allocation's going to be done in a minute. Okay, second point is the current formulas for colleges and units 8 to 15, as I mentioned, and campuses remain as they are. Okay, and we won't get into the campus one, but again, for those of us, our colleagues on the campuses, basically that 23% for Vancouver and Tri-Cities, say, is the simplest case, is split between the chancellor and the dean, and we have some guiding principles to cover that. I'll get to that shortly. Transparency has been enhanced. Okay, so in particular, I'll show this in a minute in the talk. We're basically going to provide via the web allocation of this, and Derek will show you this in a moment. Allocation of the system fraction by category, allocations to the campuses and colleges. And then also the corresponding expenditures. Remember, we allocate initially and then we actually expend based on what we get, okay, when grants, as they start to spend out. We'll also show so-called special allocations, which are things like the allocations of F&A from transfer grants for newly hired faculty. So Derek's going to spend a moment now showing you what we've put together on the transparency side for some of the stuff. So go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, and Chris, can you please stop?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing.
And I know I need to be brief as we want to get to the questions.
Right. Let's see. I got to get where did my command thing go here? Sorry, I got it.
Okay, so what we have here is a website, the draft website right now. Actually, it's not there live. It's drafted for it is live. Just some information on F&A, what it is, the current policy, and then we get to some of this stuff I'm sure you guys probably care about as much as any of that other. And so we have our charter. We have some documents from COGR explaining F&A, and then we have 2 documents that require a network ID and password. We have historical F&A information, which Chris is going to talk about a little bit in a second, and then the special F&A allocation. So this first document is, this is some of the historical F&A information. This will be out there on the web. You can look at it. I don't have much time to go over it right now, but it shows how the F&A has been coming in, where it's going on a high level. We also have a document on the special allocations. We have it currently just high level by college or area and who's getting those allocations right now on transfer grants and things like that. And then we have an expenditure report that I don't know how it'll look in Workday. That might change things, but currently right now we have, you can see how expenditures, F&A is being spent by these objects, with salaries, wages, goods and services, equipment, things like that. And you can actually drill into a college or area and see how they're doing that. And then you can even look down at the unit. So this is an Office of Research example. And then you could go in and see the same for all the units. And so we really want to get this information out there. We know you people, you all are very interested in that. And it's still a draft, but I believe the expenditures is a draft, but the rest of it is under law. And so that's kind of some of the transparency parts that we're going to do. And Chris, I'll stop sharing so you can come back on. You're muted, Chris.
Yeah, I'll finish up so we can take a few questions here. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so share. Okay, so you can see that again, everybody?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see if I got the. Hold on.
And Chris, Dan put the link to the report that that website I just showed now in the chat.
Okay. Let's see. I need to advance here. All right, there we go. Okay, great. Okay, so thanks for that. So the last piece of the new policy is guiding principles. Okay, so basically, these are things that don't appear in the current policy that I think we essentially would all agree with. All agree with. We want to make sure we're clear on, but so we obviously like chancellors and deans to work together to address the individual needs of our campuses. We want our deans and chairs to work together to use that 15-8 in the most effective way. This is basically what we did. We replaced the 23% to the deans with the maintenance of the 15-8 and transparency, as well as a guiding principle that deans and chairs directors should work together to ensure that sort of the college and unit needs are optimally met. And that's a college by college story. Individual investigator F&A is an option, just like it is now. So this is pretty much the state of things as it is today. We would like F&A spent on recruitment, though, that transferred F&A to be formally encumbered within 3 years. And then we also would like to avoid having a lot of F&A pile up. This is not a big problem, but we have a few cases where we might want to do this. So we've asked that you expend a significant amount of F&A each year and not stockpile it. And that really is a individual discussion, unit by unit, person by person, and will be dealt with by the appropriate units and deans. And let me just say that is not a widespread issue, but it is very occasionally an issue which we need a tool to deal with. Let's see. Just the last couple of minutes again. This is the current policy, which allocates it the 23%. It gets down into these complications of how it goes, right? Again, for campuses other than Pullman, half of that goes to the chancellor and the dean. If it's here Pullman or Spokane, 15% to the unit, 8% to the dean. This over here shows how that central piece goes for 28% for university. This is where, 4 plus 7 plus 28, which is 39, goes to central for all campuses. 38% goes to the campuses other than Pullman. I want to allow for questions, but I've already sort of described what the change is here. That this is sort of a flow chart of it all. But the very simple way to think of it is the 23% allocation doesn't change. On the central side, we're going to create a pool which will be managed strategically by the committee with input from others, and that fund will include the 38% from Pullman and the 39% from all campuses. Okay. And so that's what that strategic fund will be. And then lastly, this is the same slide that Derek showed you, which I don't have time to go through now, but you'll be able to see it on the web. But this tells you where all the F&A goes at sort of a summary level. Okay, so I think this is worth your time offline to study. But essentially, when I say strategic management, what's going to happen is the committee with input from across the system, which is mandated in the policy, everything labeled FSIF will be allocated dynamically by the committee and will be thought about over time. Now, of course, things like allocated benefits are mandatory. We have no say in that. But a number of these costs are, discretionary, but they can be adjusted. And of course, a lot of these are cost share with central funds. So this is a bigger issue than just the F&A, right? So we'll get into the whole strategic budgeting process as part of this. So I'm just going to stop there at 15 minutes and 27 seconds and take questions at this point. So thank you.
Yeah, Chris, would you mind stop sharing your screen?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Any questions for Christopher King? It looks like Paul has his hand up. Paul does not have his hand
I
up.
see Alan Goodman has their hand up.
Is it Al? Yeah, Alan, go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. Could you describe I noticed a small box on that flow chart about the 4% to Office of Research was for research investment and now it's for state salary issues. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, actually a lot of F&As like that. What's happening? So that 4%, Dan, you may remember this happened a long time ago. That was what, 2000 or something, or
mid 2000s.
Mid 2000s. So anyway, so that was originally for investment in research, but with the recession and everything else, we just had to use it to pay salaries essentially. And so that's what's happened, right? And we would dearly love to increase that. We are hopeful, for example, that in the years when we had F&A going up by $1 million a year, if we had this policy in place, we would have ideally perhaps have liked to use some of that increase to invest back into research. As it turns out, that didn't happen. Those funds were allocated formulaically or mechanistically. Not actually quite sure how it was done back then, probably just based on the previous year. So it's a great example though of how we like to, the need to think about how we allocate this resource.
Yeah, a quick thing on that is that some of the investments made with that 4% have gone to, hiring our assistant director for the ICO, hiring our assistant director for the IRB, which are super valuable investments that have helped all of you a ton. So it'd be great if we had another 4%, Alan, to for other investments across the system, but FYI on that.
Other questions?
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Alan.
So in the appendix, there's a new statement that says that let me pull it up so everybody knows what I'm talking about here. You must have just closed the file, but basically it says that the investigator has to spend it says significant amount of their FAA. So could you explain why this is necessary? And then I'll tell you why I think it's a bad idea.
Okay, so the idea there is we just like to be sure that F&A gets spent out reasonably quickly over time, right? We have, this is not a big problem. Let me just give you a few numbers so you know. Right now, if you look at most of our F&A, if you look at the F&A accounts that we can see anyway, that are assigned to individuals, there's about $10 million there, okay? And 80% of those funds are held by about 20 people, okay? Which is fine. And that's not a problem, but occasionally we do get in a situation where we accumulate excess. That's not good from the perspective of audit and other things like that. So we would just like to make sure that things get spent out, okay? And so all we want to do is, and right now the current policy does not provide any mechanism to do that. So all we want to do is provide deans, chairs, whoever, and the faculty, working with the faculty, the possibility to get that spent out expeditiously. And obviously, there has to be discussion about what that means, how much has to be spent by when, and that is a local discussion. And there's a sentence on the slide, I have to apologize for this, which is there, which accidentally is not in the policy, which is if the guidance for implementing that has to be done at the chair unit level, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all policy. That's why it says significant, because what's significant is a function of what you're talking about.
So if I understand what you're saying, then this is not necessarily some kind of RCW requirement or regulatory requirement. It's just a business policy of WSU
Right.
specifically. Okay, so the reason why I flag that is because there, as far as I'm aware, and I'm talking about the university almost 28 years, I've never seen any standard operating practice anywhere to replace equipment, to buy new equipment, to repair equipment. And so as an individual PI, there's a benefit to kind of saving money so you can do this kind of stuff because there's no other mechanism to do it. But even though the statement is generalized because the word significant is ambiguous, because we don't, right? I just don't know why it has to be, a specific statement in the policy.
You should be able to.
Yeah, it's there to give us a tool in case there are some accounts that are really just accruing beyond the point where it's reasonable, or we have concerns about audits. And so let me just say, this is not meant to be a policy for everyone at WSU, right? Far from it. Right? It's to give us the ability to handle a few small cases where we need to do something. Maybe we can make that clearer. It is not meant to say everyone at the university's got to spend 20% or whatever it is their FNA a year.
Okay,
We understand that the importance and value of having a standing account. It's just, it's a case by case thing.
Okay, so you're saying the interpretation of that statement would be flexible.
Yes, and if it's not flexible enough, we can work to make it flexible, but it's meant to be flexible for sure. Not meant to be a blanket, everyone, well, of course, we don't want people to sit around it, but accumulation has not been a problem. Maybe that's a better way to say it, other than just a handful of cases that we need to deal with.
All right, Chris, thank you. It's probably time to step in here. Unless somebody has another really burning question, we should probably move on. Chris, I want to know that I really enjoyed getting to know you and Dan and Derek better this semester. Felt like we had a really good working relationship. I'd also like to thank Doug Call for all the work that he's done.
Thank you, Doug.
He's really been the point man from the Faculty Senate Executive Committee on this. And if you have any questions, please send them to Dan Nordquist at nordquist@wsu.edu.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks, Chris.
David.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you all. And just again, that the latest version's posted, keep posting your comments on that one, and then, we'll take them into account. But thank you for the comments.
Thank you again. Much appreciated.
Okay. Have a good day, everyone.
Yep. Take care. All right. We will move right ahead. I'd like to introduce Associate Vice President, Facilities Services, Olivia Yang. Olivia, you're on, aren't you?
Yes, I am. I am trying to figure out. I think I'm on video now. So.
Yes, you
We see
are.
you there.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Thank you. And I'm here with Phil Johnson, who was instrumental in helping us put the state request together. So he's going to start sharing his screen.
Yep, I'm on it here. Just a second.
So far? Yep. Got it.
It's good now.
All right. Everybody can see the screen?
Yes.
Right. So first of all, I think the last time we came to you was, might have been close to a year ago, where we talked about a new capital budgeting process and talked to you about some criteria that we would use. What we'd like to do today is to kind of give you the end product of the discussions that we've been having with many people, many sectors of the system, really. The Dean's Council, the Research Council, the Associate Deans led by Mary Wack, and the Vice Chancellors for the different campuses, as well as, of course, my boss, Stacy Pearson, and Interim Provost Slinker at the time this was pulling together. And we've been working also very closely with government relations, Colleen Kerr and Chris Mulick, in putting together the state capital budget portion. So Phil, next, please. So I want to put this slide in front of you because it gives you kind of our guiding principles. What we wanted to do was to understand all our needs and be able to prioritize and find ways to fund them, thinking about all our funds. Now, at the moment, almost all of our money is going to be coming, all of our capital money is going to be coming from the state. But we hope that one day in the future, we will have the ability to borrow money again and have bond money, and that we would have donor money also for capital projects and any form of public-private partnerships that may be out there. So we're trying to devise something that is all needs, all funds. And what you're seeing and what I'm talking to you about is our first attempt at a new process. The process obviously is system-wide, so it's not Pullman or any campus-centric. And we wanted a way to prioritize needs because particularly in the current environment where almost all of our money is coming from the state, we have more needs than we will have money for. So next. So I put this chart up and I know it's very, very hard to read, even if you were looking at it on your phone or your screen or your computer. What I'm trying to make the point is that we started this process with a two-sided set of criteria. On the left-hand side is your almost textbook criteria that many universities use to prioritize their capital spending, which goes back to the mission of the university, teaching, research, and service and engagement. Because of the condition of our campus, system-wide, most drastically, of course, in Pullman, because it's the oldest campus, but also in Tri-Cities, and then growing new needs in Spokane and Vancouver, we have introduced for the time being a second set of criteria, which we're calling operational efficiencies. And there we're looking at how to renew the facilities that we have so that we're not just building new buildings and really taking on new responsibilities for operations and maintenance without being able to deal with the buildings that we already have. So right now we're in a situation where the buildings that were built a long time ago are in not the best shape while we keep building new buildings. And at the same time, we have limited maintenance resources. And so those resources keep getting stretched thinner and thinner the more buildings we add on. So our approach had been to try to balance the programmatic or the academic needs on the left with some reality of, well, we really need to be trying to improve the buildings that we have and try to renovate them. And if we build new, ideally, we are building new on the site of a less optimal building site. So the next slide. shows the programmatic needs in a more legible form. There's one line in red because when we presented this to the various groups in the campus, there was a notion that we should add for research a metric on economic development. And the next one, next slide, goes more into those operational efficiency criteria that I mentioned. So if there are no questions so far, I'm going to jump right ahead now to the capital budget submittal that we turned into the state about a month ago. We will have more detailed slides about each one. So I want to make a few comments. Oh, Phil, can you put this in presentation form? I think maybe it's hard to read for people. So while Phil's doing that, couple of things. Oh, thank you, Phil. Couple of things. One is that we have asked for a total of $149 million. If you remember, or if you're keeping track, in previous biennium, we had asked for something close to 200 million. 200 million had been our high watermark, as it were, and this is the money we got before the Great Recession of 08. Since then, the money we've gotten has always hovered around 100, 110, you know, maybe 120. And what happens when we ask for a lot and we usually get a little is that then the priorities that we submit aren't followed. And so depending on how the priorities of the different members go, you know, what is our bottom priority could be funded ahead of a higher or medium priority. So we thought, well, let's try something different. Let's make our request tighter so that maybe we would have a better chance of getting everything. The second thing I'd point out is at the last line, it talks about a preventative maintenance budget of 10 million. So this is really not money that we get to use buildings. This is a, I'm not sure how to call it. This is a device that the legislature started using some 10 years ago, where this is actually a line item that belonged in the operating budget. But at the time, and is still true, the operating budget could not accommodate it, so they shoved it over into the capital budget. And so it's really paying for maintenance, which is salaries primarily, and not paying for a building. So we understand why it's done because, you know, there's a lot of pressure on the operating budget, as we all know. However, this is, it does have unintended outcomes. If you recall last time, we did not get a capital budget for many months. And so that salary was also frozen. So, but it's one of those interesting little characteristics about our capital budget. So now I'm going to go into the next few slides, which actually get into the details of our request. So the top request is actually MCR, because for the same reason that we have the companion criteria for building operational efficiencies, we are in effect saying, if we try to tell people that we have a serious deferred maintenance backlog, and that backlog is causing us to have our infrastructure and our facilities start to fail, and I know many of you are actually living that, so you know better than us what that means, then this is putting MCR as number one is kind of putting our mouth where our money is, or where we want our money to be. So we are asking for $35 million of preservation money. That money we propose being divided into 5 categories. And even within the 5 categories, you will see that there is an emphasis on the infrastructure and the mechanical electrical systems. It is not 35 million divided equally into 5 categories. And we'll talk a little bit about what some of that looks like in some of the other slides. So the second slide, the next slide shows the second priority, which is MCI and Omnibus. we got MCI money for the first time in, I think, 3 or 4 biennia. And so we're very pleased about that. And we are asking for it again. MCI is different from MCR because MCI funds programmatic needs, instructional equipment, for example, omnibus equipment, startups, technology upgrades. And so you see that's the sort of things that we have in our request. What happened is that we actually had a call for MCI and omnibus. And instead of listing out the various items, we thought we would put them in categories because perhaps that would give us a little bit more flexibility in how we allocate it so that when we do allocate, it would be towards the needs that are most pressing and most relevant. So the next slide then starts to get into kind of the line item projects. So the first of those is the demolition of Johnson Hall. Some of you may know that USDA ARS is funded for $104.9 million for a new research building for ARS in the Pullman campus. In preliminary conversations with ARS, both from what they call headquarters and from our own ARS research groups here, we've determined that the best site for that new building is the site of Johnson Hall. It's also consistent with the master plan of the rec centers. And so the money from the ARS allocation does not allow that money to be spent on anything except a new building. And so in order to help put that building in the best site possible relative to the whole rec complex, we are asking for $8 million to demolish Johnson Hall. The advantage also is that ARS does not provide annual O&M money per se. And so what we would do is the savings from Johnson Hall, which actually maintenance operations and utilities totals slightly over $1 million a year. So that $1 million goes back into the pot and can be used to offset the operations, maintenance, and utility costs of the new building. So that's number 3. And the next one, this is not the most glamorous of all projects, but really important. We have a very old, not code compliant water reservoir, which holds water for fire protection and domestic water. We, in fact, have a letter already from the Department of Health. So we are proposing replacing it, demolishing the old, adding a new, also for $8 million. This is the sort of, this is a separate line item because even though it would be typically the sort of thing you would fund out of MCR, there's a cap on MCR projects at $2 million, and this is 8. And so we've decided to make it a separate line item. It is fairly important for all of our buildings, well, for all of us, to have water. So that's pretty high on our list. The next one then, this is a request that we think of as a legacy request. We asked for pre-design, and in what previous biennium, in the current biennium, we asked for design money. We didn't get it. We made another ask during the supplemental session and did get design money. And so following the normal course of events, we're asking for construction money. And this is a new building in Vancouver. Vancouver has not had any visible capital activity for close to 10 years. And so their needs are growing, and this new building would meet those growing needs. The next one is Spokane. Some of you may be aware that Eastern Washington University, which is co-located in the Spokane campus, is vacating a building. They are getting a new building, what we call across the tracks, if you're familiar with the Spokane campus, across the railroad tracks. And so this building, whose name is Phase 1, this is the Phase 1 building, will be empty. And along what we're doing in all of our building portfolios, where we're trying to renovate buildings instead of automatically building a new building, we're saying when that building is vacant, we will come in and renovate it towards the health science goals for that campus. And the next one. So 7 and 8, number 7 and number 8 are what we call pre-designs. The state normally funds construction in 6 years, each biennium. You get a little bit of money. So the first stop is you get what's called pre-design, which is really a planning effort. And then you get design in the next biennium, and ideally you get construction in the third biennium. So in this case, we are asking for pre-design money for both a science building in the site, on the site of Field Hall, and a new STEM building, very likely on the site of Dana for engineering. Both of these arts and science and engineering, as you all well know, teach the majority of our undergraduates, and there has not been investment in their teaching and research facilities for many years, and this is hopefully the start of something to get us there. Again, I'll make the point that as part of our awareness of our deferred maintenance and the condition of our facilities, we are trying very hard to put any new building on the site of an existing building that perhaps has outlived its usefulness. So you'll see that as a trend here and in the future. It's either demolition and new or renovation, which then brings us up to number 9, which is a small example of renovation. We are asking then for $4.9 million to renovate teaching labs in Eastlick. So we had asked for this money before. We had asked for 4.9 before. We got 1, and so we took the 1 million and renovated 1 lab in Eastlick for biology. And so you see what was there on the left is what it looked like before. And now we have improved ventilation, and it's set up for better experiential learning, I guess you would say. There's someone from Arts and Science who will correct me. But this allows the students to talk to each other and with the instructor better. And so they are very happy with this 1 lab. And so we're asking for 4.9 again to do the rest of the labs. And our approach on these renovations is some of the money goes what we call behind the wall, so that the mechanical electrical infrastructure, which is also aging, is upgraded. And then the other half goes inside the room so that what you see and what your students see is also improved. And then the last one is a renovation of research labs in Clark. Sometimes if you hear us talking, you will hear us talk about dominoes. So when you do renovations, obviously the people who are in the building you're renovating have to have a place to go. So we've devised a kind of musical chairs. So we have a place for people to go so that we can renovate a building and then move people out, renovate another building, et cetera, et cetera. Clark actually is it follows on to Rec 5. So when Rec 5 is complete, we move people out of Clark into Rec 5, and we're able to renovate Clark in very simple terms. So that's kind of our request and what it all looks like. We have, as I said, this is the first time we've tried a different process from the past in how we identify and prioritize projects. We are actually getting together again to evaluate what we thought went well and didn't go well. We then hope to engage again in discussions with all the groups we've been talking with. The facilities officers of the different colleges, go back to the Dean's Council, Research Council, the Associate Deans for Teaching, the Vice Chancellors. hopefully back to you all when you have, if you can have time in your meetings, and just talk about, well, what was good and what could have been improved, because we'd like this process to make every dollar count. We have a lot of needs, and our buildings and our facilities and our infrastructure, utility infrastructure, is not in the best shape to support the work you do, and we think it is our responsibility to do something about it. So that's, I'll end there and see if we have questions from all of you, any of you.
Any questions for Olivia? Olivia, yeah, there we go.
Yes, thank you.
Do you see any hands?
I do not see any raised hands.
No questions?
We got a raised hand, Mike Kahn.
Mike,
Mike?
Hi, Olivia. In the prioritization, you have the Johnson Hall deconstruction at number 3 and the
Yes.
Clark Hall renovation at number 10. But as people have been talking to me, there needs to be places for the people from Johnson Hall to go
Yes,
when Johnson Hall is taken down. That's a very big building, as you're aware. And Clark is not big enough to accommodate it, but it's pretty much what's there. Is there any chance of moving Clark higher in the priority list?
well, Clark is tied to Rec 5, actually.
And Rec 5 will be finishing, supposedly we get possession of that next week.
Mhm.
And we'll start moving out of Clark into Rec 5
Yes,
the week after that.
yes.
So I guess the issue is with this priority, is Clark Hall going to get enough renovation for the people in Johnson to move into it?
It's not necessarily, I think Johnson and Rec 5/Clark are almost parallel. We have been engaged with the college, Kimi, for example, in trying to find places for the Johnson faculty to be in. Some of them are actually in Rec 5, so there is a good chance that a good portion of Johnson will be vacated. But we are very aware of the need to not have anyone be homeless out of Johnson. And we're, among other things, we're trying to minimize the time in which Johnson actually goes down and other available surge space is available for them. So this is still in the works. I'm not going to say we've got it completely worked out, but I know we've been working very diligently. Jason Bearlocker, Kimi Lucas, and everybody else, Louis Sweeney, and our space people have been working on this. I don't know that our hope is that by tightening the request to 149 million instead of the 200 plus, that we will get everything. And if we do, then I think we would be it'll be an easier problem to solve.
all right, I think Umesh has his hand up. Umesh.
Yeah, I had a technical question. I was under the impression that the state required us to build 100-year buildings. That means buildings that last 100 years. Is Johnson Hall 100 years old, or is this a requirement that's just been in effect the last few decades?
Johnson Hall is not 100 years old. Johnson Hall is a very big and stout building. It probably could last 100 years. That's one. Back to the first point, the state actually does not require us to build 100-year buildings. I think it is a goal that many universities have. I come from many years at University of Washington. That was certainly a very visible goal that they had, the 100-year buildings. So the fact is that Johnson represents a significant collection of deferred maintenance issues. It is time for it to be renovated. I mean, and maybe I'll stop here and say, even if a building was intended to last 100 years, what we usually mean is that the structure, the concrete, the floors, the walls, the columns, we hope would last 100 years. But the best practice is to renew it on a regular basis. And so most mechanical electrical systems, for example, are supposed to last 25, 30, 35 years. Roofs, for example, are supposed to go 5, 10, 20, maybe 30 years. Elevators need to be replaced. As I said before, we had previous years had a great push in building new buildings, and now we need to balance that by looking at the existing buildings and seeing what renewal investment is needed to get them up to speed. So that said, the decision was still made to build the new building on top of Johnson because the new building will be, we hope, more efficiently laid out and would be better suited to meet the needs of the research within the research and education complex.
Olivia, I'm going to cut in here.
Okay.
Unless there are any other burning questions from any of the senators, I'd like to thank you for your willingness to come and speak to us today. I also want you to know that I've enjoyed working with you on our committee that meets on Thursdays at 7:30 a.m. I was happy to see that we didn't have that meeting today, but I'll look forward to seeing you on our next meeting there.
Yes, bright and early.
Bright and early. Thank you so much, Olivia. Much appreciated.
Thank you for the time.
Yep, thank you.
All right, bye.
Okay, moving on. We have a quorum, so I'm calling the meeting to order. And we will start with the approval of the minutes from October 8th. Are there any corrections to the minutes from October 8th? If there are no corrections, the minutes stand approved, and we'll move on to announcements. We have 3 information items. The first one is the minor change bulletin number 3 that's located in Exhibit B. The second information item, we are accepting nominations for faculty legislative representative. We're going to the Faculty Senate Steering Committee will vote on that later this semester. But if you have anybody that you would like to nominate for the faculty legislative representative position, we would like to ask that you get those nominations into us by November 5th, please. And you can email those into the Faculty Senate office. Would Gail be the best person to send those to? Yeah, send those to Gail Anderson, the Faculty Senate office.
Do you want to mention that Steve is continuing?
We do have one individual who is looking to continue on, Steve Bolins, who's currently serving as our legislative representative, is interested in running again. So FYI. Moving on to our third information item. We are seeking members for the Washington State University Human Resource Services Task Force. The Human Resource Services Task Force will be chaired by Professor Glenn Duncan, who will seek to recruit members from across the entire system. Those interested, please email Glenn at glenn.duncan, D-U-N-C-A-N, at wsu.edu. The HRS Task Force will strive to summarize its findings and recommendations in late spring with the goal of submitting a report to the Office of the President no later than May 2021. If you want to know more about that, I think there's a link on your agenda that you can click on to get more information. All right, moving on to reports. Remarks by the chair. I want you to know that I served on the search committee for the new Vice Provost for Enrollment Management. We finished our interviews, and I anticipate that the university will hear something in the very near future as to who we've hired for that position. Beginning today, we will vote as a Senate using the polls feature in Zoom. You'll see that down at the bottom of your
Well, they won't see
screen.
it. When the poll is activated, it will pop up.
Oh, it'll pop up. Wonderful. per Senate rules, the votes will not be anonymous. And by the way, if you are not a senator, do not vote. Thank you. All right, recently, the Faculty Senate Executive Committee was asked to nominate 3 faculty members for consideration to serve on the new Executive Budget Council. Provost Chilton and Vice President Stacy Pearson chose one individual from that group, and they chose Celestina Barbosa Leiker to serve on this council, and it will strive to better understand Washington State University's current budget practices and develop a budget model to better align our resource allocation to the achievement of strategic goals. All right, that finishes the chair's announcements. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda today? All right. Hearing none, we'll move forward with the agenda as is. We'll move to our action items. Action item number 1, the recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the undergraduate bulletin number 1. Debbie Handy, I think I see her. Yes, and she's here to answer any questions. Do we have any discussion regarding action item number 1? Tammy.
Tammy, unmute.
I have just a short comment. I was trying to pull it up. This is the one that also includes the sociology minor, the new sociology minor in society and health.
All right, say that again, Tammy, is that a part of the requirements?
This is the bulletin that includes the new sociology minor in society and health.
Okay.
I just noticed, I didn't notice it last time, but there is a class in there that's one of the electives to choose from that's not very often or ever really offered in Pullman, which is Psych 310. I don't think it needs to change anything about the proposal. I just wanted to bring it to the attention for sociology to know that that class is taught regularly at some of the, like at Tri-Cities in Vancouver and maybe on Global Campus, but not Pullman, just because of the teaching load and expertise of different faculty.
And it is there as a choice among other classes, so that hopefully will not affect students very much. Good, thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, I don't think it should hold up anything. It was just more of a FYI.
Any other discussion on action item number 1? See any hands or anything anywhere?
I see no hands.
Okay.
All right, I have launched the poll.
You can vote using the Zoom poll.
Voting is taking place. I'll wait 3 more seconds. All right, the results are unanimous and to approve, 55 votes in favor, 0 votes against.
All right, action item number 1 passes. Moving on to action item number 2. The recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 67, dropping a course. I still have the polls thing in my screen there. Do I remove that?
No,
You can.
you can just.
Oh,
hit
so it's
next.
just mine. Oh, okay, I get it. All right. The recommendation from Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 67. Any discussion? You see any hands?
I see no hands on my screen. Okay,
All right, we'll launch the poll.
okay, the second poll is launched. it open for 5 more seconds. Okay, the decision's unanimous, 55 in favor, 0 against.
Okay, action item number 2 passes. Moving on to our discussion items. Discussion item number 1, the recommendation from the Faculty Affairs Committee to approve the updates to the Faculty Senate Constitution and bylaws regarding legislative representatives. Any discussion regarding discussion item number 1? I do see that Kelly Farnsworth says there needs to be an abstention option in the votes. There does not. We do not count abstentions according to Robert's Rules of Order, so we just count yays and nays. Any discussion on discussion item number 1? Anybody see any hands?
No hands here. Let me just peruse. I see no hands.
All right. Moving on to discussion item number 2. The recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised major curricular changes to mechanical engineering, PhD. Any discussion to discussion item number 2?
No hands.
All right. Number 3, the recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised major curricular changes to mechanical engineering, MS thesis option. Any discussion of discussion item number 3?
See no hands.
All right, moving on to number 4, the recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised program changes to mechanical engineering MS, the non-thesis. Any discussion? All right, moving on to number 5. The recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised major curricular changes to materials science and engineering, MS thesis. Any discussion?
No hands.
Hearing none, we'll move on to number 6. The recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised major curricular changes to materials science and engineering, MS non-thesis.
For hands, not seeing any. Just a moment. No hands.
Which one was that? I lost track.
That was number 6.
All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to number 7. The recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised major curricular changes to software engineering, MS, non-thesis. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move on to number 8. The recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised certificate changes to nuclear materials, science, and engineering. Discussion?
No hands have appeared.
All right, hearing none, moving on to number 9, the recommendation from the Graduate Studies Committee to approve revised certificate changes to C-Inspire Carbon and Nitrogen Systems Policy-Oriented Integrated Research and Education. Discussion on number 9.
So far, nothing.
All right, hearing none, moving on to number 10. A recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve a new Rule 49, undergraduate enrollment limits. Any discussion on number 10?
Could you just clarify
Yes.
precisely what the change has been here?
This is a new rule. It's to explain, I think, some things that have been in practice for a number of years around credit limits. There was a good discussion in committee about trying to recognize, oh, wait a minute, am I looking at the right one? Yes. Recognize what a standard load is for students, and then to recognize practices of kind of best practice in terms of looking at what's really the max number of credits a student should be taking during any semester.
Thank you.
Any other comments, discussion?
I had my hand up, but I think Debbie might have
Oh.
answered it.
Just appeared. I
Yeah,
apologize.
it seemed as if that it used to be in the catalog before and it got phased out. Is that the case, that this is just returning some language that somehow is now missing?
That might be, Tammy. There, and Becky might jump in here at some point, but there were some things that were in practice in a particular place in the manual, but they weren't necessarily in rule. And we're trying to consolidate a lot of those things into rules for consistency.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Okay, I see no more hands.
All right, moving on to number 11. A recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 100, the grade point system. Discussion on number 11? No?
I see no blue hands.
All right. Number 12, the recommendation from the Academic Affairs Committee to approve the revision to Rule 17, credit for prior learning. Any discussion on number 12?
No hands are raised on my screen.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to constituents' concerns. Do we have any constituents' concerns today?
We have Julie Akers' hand is up.
Julie.
Hey there. So a lot of emails going around in our program today after the memo came out about the new temporary COVID grade. And in reading it, it very much sounded like it was all programs, all university having this new grading amendment where they can, instead of if they fail a course, they can change it to a no record COVID score. And we were just hoping if there was any opportunity for discussion of allowing exceptions by program where student progress committee is handled internally within a program versus at the university level. And I know there are a few different programs who, besides just pharmacy, that handle that themselves. And also thinking about how it affects progression, if it's not a fail and whether they can go. Right now, the way it's written, they would not be sent to our student progress committee. And we handle it ourselves specifically because it is a healthcare profession, and being able to progress with that on file versus a fail could put them into a situation where rotations and such where patient safety could be impacted. So just kind of respectfully requesting an exception or some way to make sure that students wouldn't be able to progress as that's still housed within our program.
Debbie, do you have any response to that off the top of your head?
Yes, Becky Bitter did get some clarification for us, and that grade would not be counted as a pass. That would allow them to progress. So it essentially counts more as a withdrawal, and that requirement has not been met.
Okay, so from our student handbook setting, we could still consider that a fail and move them to student progress, even though it's not an official fail on the record. That was our biggest concern. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it would allow you to hold them back from the next stage because they haven't met that requirement.
Okay.
So Julie, I would encourage you to connect with Debbie Handy. This will come to the Senate eventually for a vote. So you should certainly feel free to communicate with the chair of the Academic Affairs Committee and also with the chair of the Graduate Studies Committee as well. Okay, Julie?
Sounds good. I'll be sending an email and tying in all the people who were emailing me today. Thanks.
Good, thank you.
And Julie, Academic Affairs is scheduled to talk about this next Tuesday. And I see Becky's there.
And Julie, I would also say that we'll talk about this with the Professional Health Sciences Committee. So.
Thanks, Becky.
You bet.
This is also a concern of the College of Nursing. We ditto what Julie has to say.
Thank you, Catherine. You still have your hand up. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, that was it. Thank you.
Okay.
Julia Day.
Yep. Julia Day, you have a hand up.
Hi there. I had a few emails today from constituents about the multi-factor authentication email that came out today for the IT rollout next week. And just there's a lot of concern from our department and college about the timing of that. And so I'm not sure if this is the right venue to bring that up. And I know it's already been delayed once, but they've asked me to bring it up.
Greg, would you care to talk to that? Greg Crouch.
So I'm on ITSAC, which is the advisory committee that's discussing this, and we pushed pretty hard at the last meeting that there's not a end user sort of experience yet. So we're working directly with Sashi on that. What the email said and what Sashi's intention are very, very different. So we're hoping to get some clarification to the area technology officers within the next few days. So it has been pushed, Julia.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Greg. Tammy Berry.
Hi again. I wanted to circle back to the NRC grade. I know it's coming to Senate for discussion later. I just wanted to alert everyone that one of the things that is unclear to the graduate school, because I'm also an associate dean in the graduate school, is whether it would apply to graduate students. We were under the impression it would be much like the PP and P grades from spring 2020, not applying to graduate students, but it's written more generically, even though it does start off talking about that spring 2020 process, which was for undergraduates only. And it was sent to the GSC, as the GSC chairs know. And so we're just seeking some clarification about that. And I just wanted to kind of, since it got brought up, alert everyone to the fact that that may require further discussion. And if there's any feedback that people have about whether that NRC grade should or should not apply to graduate students, that might be helpful to hear.
Debbie or Umesh or Gary, do you have any comments? I see Becky Bitter raised her hand. Becky, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say that I heard from Matt Zimmerman that he understood that perhaps a revised memo on the NRC grade from the provost would be coming forward to saying that the graduate school, graduate courses would not have that. So.
That's helpful, Becky. Yeah, this is just communications are literally happening this afternoon
Right.
between me and Mary Wack. And so
Right.
it's kind of unfolding. And
Yeah.
I think that perhaps the memo that might be going around a little bit isn't in its final form.
Yeah, Heiko.
Hi, everybody. I just wanted to bring up, apparently you're going to be discussing the proposal put forth by Jim Kruger regarding athletics on the 27th. And I wonder if the committee will be providing the Faculty Senate with a report on the outcome of those meetings at the next Faculty Senate meeting or before.
Absolutely, we will.
Thank you.
Yep. Any others? Anyone else this afternoon?
We got
I'll
a
just
chat
go back to
from-
the MFA conversion there and say that I'd really like to see WSU accommodate more email programs than just Outlook. I've used Mozilla Thunderbird for a long time, and if people other using other major email programs, if WSU could accommodate them, that would be ideal.
Charles, that too was discussed. Outlook's authenticated end-to-end. It works with MFA and MAM, which is a technology that if your device is lost or stolen, it can dump the inbox and protect information. Email is our biggest security risk at the university. It cost us the most money. So Outlook was voted on by this committee, and it is the choice that we're Office 365, and it's encrypted, and it's that part's not going to change. The MFA, MMA, or MAM part probably will change. But Outlook has been, yeah.
Thank you, Greg.
I didn't know if Alexander Dimitrov wanted to expand on that comment.
Alex, did you have something to say? No? All right, any other concerns this afternoon? Does anybody see any hands?
At the moment, I see no hands. I'll peruse the pictures one more time. I see no hands on the participant list.
All right, everyone. I want to thank you again for another wonderful Senate meeting. Hang in there. We have 4 more weeks till Thanksgiving break. Just keep grinding it out. And you're welcome for the poll voting. I think that worked very, very well today. Unless anybody objects, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
And buckle your seatbelt for the next one.